Introduction: The World of the Rus, a listener's guide to the Slavic soul of this story. Welcome, dear listener, to the world of the runes of the rod, a world where the rivers whisper in forgotten tongues, the forests breathe with ancient sentience, and the gods of thunder and earth still walk among mortals. Before we begin our journey into the heart of Kievan Rus, let us pause for a moment to understand the living tapestry of folklore, myth, and history that colours every page of this tale. The Old Gods and the New Faith. Our story is set in the 1960s AD, a time of profound spiritual upheaval. The Eastern Slavs, the ancestors of today's Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians, had for centuries worshipped a pantheon of nature deities. These were not distant, abstract beings. They were forces that could be felt in the crackling of a hearth fire, the rush of the spring flood, the rumble of thunder across the steppe. The supreme god was Perun, the thunderer, who hurled his axes from the sky and protected warriors. His rival was Veles, the horned god of the underworld, cattle, and poetry, a shapeshifter who moved between the realms of the living and the dead. Between them stood Svarog, the celestial smith, who forged the sun and the stars. But during the 10th century, a new faith was pressing in from the south: Byzantine Christianity. Princess Olga, the historical ruler of Kiev, would eventually convert, and her grandson Vladimir would later baptize the entire realm. This transition was neither swift nor gentle. The old gods were demonized, their temples toppled, their priests silenced. Yet the old beliefs never truly died. They retreated into the forests, into the whispered charms of village healers, into the bedtime stories that grandmothers told to grandchildren, stories that survived, hidden and transformed for 1,000 years. Baba Yaga, goddess or witch? Perhaps no figure in Slavic folklore is as iconic and as misunderstood as Baba Yaga. In popular tales, she is the bony-legged hag who lives in a hut that stands on chicken legs, who flies in a mortar and sweeps away her tracks with a pestle. She devours the unwary and offers riddles to the brave. But in our novel, I have chosen to honour a different interpretation, one that many scholars now believe may be closer to her original form. Baba Yaga may have begun as a powerful earth goddess, a protector of children, and a guardian of the boundary between life and death. Her hut, which turns to face visitors, echoes the sacred gateways of ancient shrines. Her chicken legs connect her to the underworld, where the dead are carried in a bird-shaped vessel. Her bone leg is a mark of her liminal nature, neither fully human nor fully divine. As Christianity spread, her image was deliberately twisted. The goddess became a hag, the guardian became a monster. In our story, she is both, a being of immense age and wisdom, weary of her monstrous reputation, yet still fierce enough to defend the old ways. She is a mirror of what the Slavic world lost when it turned away from its roots. The runes, lines and cuts. The runes that Anna and Olga discover are not the famous Norse runes of Scandinavia, though they share a distant ancestry. The Eastern Slavs had their own system of sacred marks, known as cheti I rezi, lines and cuts. These were carved into pottery, bone, and wood, and they served as both writing and magic. Each symbol was believed to carry its own power. Krada, fire, could purify and transform. Raduga, rainbow, could bridge worlds. The rune of unity could bind souls across time. While historical evidence for such a full runic alphabet is debated, many artifacts from the Chernyakov culture, 3rd to 6th centuries, and later Slavic settlements show signs of proto-writing. I have taken poetic license to weave these fragments into a coherent system of power, a language that speaks not only to the mind, but to the blood. Zmieviki, serpent amulets. The Zmievik pendants worn by Anna and Olga are based on real archaeological finds. These serpent amulets, typically made of bronze or iron, depict a coiled snake or dragon with two heads facing opposite directions. They were worn as protective charms, against disease, against evil spirits, against the evil eye. The serpent, for the Slavs, was not merely a symbol of danger. It was a creature of wisdom, of the earth's hidden depths, and of the cycle of shedding and renewal. To wear as Mythology was to carry a guardian spirit close to your heart. The Pechenegs and the Khazars. The dangers that threaten Kiev in our story are not purely supernatural. The Pechenegs were a real Turkic nomadic confederation that harassed the Rus settlements along the Dnieper River throughout the 10th century. They were skilled horsemen, feared for their swift raids and their ability to melt back into the steppe. To the southeast, the Khazar Khaganate was a powerful empire that had once dominated the region. By the 960s, it was in decline, yet its shadow still loomed over trade routes and diplomacy. Our heroes, Ratisbor and Dobrynya, belonged to the Družina, the warrior retinues that served the princes of Kiev. These men were not simply soldiers. They were bound by oaths of loyalty and kinship, sharing plunder and honor in equal measure. They fought with swords, axes and spears, and they wore mail and shields that bore the scars of 100 skirmishes. The forest as a living presence. In Slavic mythology, the forest was not a place of simple resources. It was a sentient being, a realm of spirits, of leshy, forest guardians, and rusalki, water nymphs, of enchanted glades and speaking trees. The great wood of our story is drawn from this tradition, a liminal space where the veil between worlds grows thin, where the old gods still whisper from the shadows of oaks older than kingdoms. To enter the forest was to enter a pact. Respect it, and it might guide you. Offend it, and it would devour you. A story of memory and resistance. At its heart, The Runes of the Rod is a story about memory, about the fragile thread that connects us to our ancestors, and the struggle to keep that thread unbroken in the face of erasure. The darkness that threatens the land is not merely an army of Pechenegs. It is the forgetting of the old songs, the silencing of the old voices, the fading of the old ways into myth. Anna and Olga are not just heroines, they are keepers, women who carry the weight of their people's soul. Their journey is a testament to the power of family, of sisterhood, of love that transcends fear. And their shield is not a wall of stone, but a web of stories, woven from rune to rune, from heart to heart. As you listen to this tale, I invite you to imagine the scent of pine and wood smoke, the murmur of the Dnieper at twilight, the flicker of a fire in a hut that stands on chicken legs. Let the runes sing in your blood as they sing in the blood of our heroines. The rod remembers, and now, so will you. Anna Gogoleva, 2026. The Runes of the Rod, a novel of ancient Rus. Prologue. The Secret of the Old Chest. Chapter 1. The Attic. The attic breathed. That was the first thing Anna noticed as she pushed open the warped wooden door and stepped into the suffocating heat of the summer noon. It breathed in shallow, dusty gasps, each exhalation stirring the motes of light that swam through the single grimy window like half-drowned fireflies. The air was thick with the ghost of lavender, the tang of rusted iron, and something else, something older, sweeter, like dried honey and crumbling birch bark. Anna knelt on the splintered floorboards, the rough grain biting through the thin wool of her dress. Her heavy chestnut braid slipped over her shoulder and swept a clean arc through the grime as she reached into the yawning mouth of the wrought iron chest. The hinges gave a long, mournful groan, a sound so steeped in memory that it seemed less like metal and more like the voice of the chest itself, waking from a sleep of decades and cursing the unwelcome light. "Carefully, Olga," she said, her voice carrying the calm, practiced authority of an eldest sister who had long ago learned that soft commands were sharper than shouts. "You'll tear the embroidery. Those threads are older than grandmother." Olga, 2 summers younger, had already unwrapped half a dozen bundles with the restless, greedy fingers of a sparrow pecking at winter grain. She knelt amidst a chaos of faded linens, frayed ribbons, and a broken wooden comb that might once have belonged to a princess. Her hair, the colour of river stones in winter, a shifting grey-brown that caught the light like wet slate, fell across her face as she worked. Her eyes, too bright and too quick, held the restless shimmer of storms about to break. "Anna, look at this!" Olga held up a cloth that might once have been white. Now it was yellowed as old bone, its intricate red patterns, spirals and zigzags, birds with human faces, almost swallowed by time. Yet as Anna squinted, she could have sworn the threads pulsed, faintly, like a sleeping heart. Anna paused, her hand still resting on a bundle wrapped in rabbit fur. "They're not moving. It's the light through the window playing tricks. You always did let your imagination run wild, especially when grandmother's stories are fresh in your mind," but she trailed off. Because the patterns were moving, just slightly, like the wings of a moth trapped under glass, or the slow writhing of serpents in a dream. A chill, wholly unrelated to the attic's stifling heat, traced its way down her spine. Olga's voice dropped to a whisper, reverent and afraid. "Grandmother's stories. She said the old ones never truly sleep. She said they wait in the wood and the thread and the iron, waiting for blood that remembers." Anna straightened, her knees popping. At 19, she felt ancient some days, carrying the weight of their household since their mother had faded into a fevered sleep 2 winters past. Their father, a merchant who plied the Dnieper River from Novgorod to the Black Sea, was rarely home. He brought back furs and amber from the north, glass beads from the east, and tales of skirmishes along the river's banks. But never a word about the chest in the attic, or the secrets grandmother kept locked behind her pale, knowing eyes. "Let me see," Anna said, reaching for the cloth. Olga snatched it back, pressing it to her chest. "No, I found it. And anyway, you always take things and inspect them like they're damaged goods." "Because they are damaged goods, Olga. Grandmother would never forgive us if we ruined a family heirloom." "She'd forgive me." Olga's smile was quick, impish, but there was a flicker of defiance beneath it. "I'm the favourite. She said so." "She said no such thing." "She said I had the sight. That's better than being a favourite. The sight is a pain in our backsides more often than not," Anna finished, but there was no real sharpness in it. She loved her sister, fiercely, protectively, with the tangled devotion of a mother, a sister, and a friend all bound into one. Since their mother's death, Anna had become all those things to Olga, and Olga, in her own way, had become something to Anna, a bridge to a world Anna could never quite grasp, a realm of shadow and half-light, of whispers in the dark and the murmur of unseen wings. "The chest," Olga said suddenly, all playfulness gone. "There's something else, something heavy." Anna had felt it too. Her fingers brushed against a surface that was not cloth, not fur, not wood. Something cold and impossibly smooth beneath layers of wool and linen. Not the shape of a tool, nor the weight of a weapon. Rectangular, solid, waiting. "Help me," she said, and together they lifted the bundles aside, their breath quickening. The chest had a false bottom. Anna had heard of such things. They appeared in grandmother's winter tales, when the snow piled against the walls and the wolves howled beyond the palisade. But she had never expected to find one, never imagined that the ordinary iron chest in their ordinary attic could hold anything more than moth-eaten shawls and her mother's wedding wreath. "It's a book," she breathed. It was not a book as she knew it. No parchment leaves, no leather bindings stained by candle smoke. This was something far older, far stranger. 2 wooden boards, thick as her thumb and black with age, carved with symbols that drank the dusty light and gave it back as a faint inner glow. The boards were lashed together with leather straps so brittle they flaked like the skin of a serpent shedding its seasons. Olga reached out, her fingers trembling. "Don't," Anna said, sharper than she intended. But Olga's hand was already hovering over the carved face of the book. Her eyes had gone distant, that familiar, unsettling glaze that Anna had learned to recognize and fear in equal measure. It was the look that came over her sister before she spoke of things she could not possibly know. The death of a neighbour's cow before it sickened, the arrival of a stranger before he knocked, the shape of a storm before the clouds gathered. "They're singing," Olga whispered. "What?" "The symbols. They're singing to me. A song about fire, about earth, about a road that has no end." Her voice grew dreamy, threaded with an old, aching melody. "And there's a voice, a woman's voice, telling me to remember. She says the rod is waiting." Anna's heart hammered against her ribs. "Olga, stop, you're scaring me." Olga blinked, and the distant look receded like a tide pulling back from a shore. Her eyes cleared, and she stared at Anna with a sudden, unnerving calm. "I'm not scared, Anna. I'm ready. I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know it." Anna took her sister's hand and pulled it away from the book. "We need to show grandmother. Now. No arguments." For once, Olga did not argue. Chapter 2. The Keeper of the Rod. Vedena sat by the fire, though the day was warm and the flames made the kitchen thick with a drowsy, suffocating heat. She was ancient beyond measure, her face a living map of wrinkles that traced the long, winding journey of her life. Each furrow a river, each crease a memory. She had once been beautiful. That much was clear from the proud bones of her face, the straightness of her nose, the remnants of a chin that had never bowed to anyone. Her hair was the colour of fresh snow, and her eyes, a pale, shifting grey that mirrored the winter sky, missed nothing, not even the secrets her granddaughters thought they hid. She was stirring a pot of honey and herbs, chamomile, St. John's wort, and something darker, earthier, whose name she had never spoken aloud. The sweet, pungent vapour mingled with the wood smoke, curling around the blackened rafters like a living thing. The door burst open, and Anna and Olga tumbled inside, their faces flushed, their breath ragged. "Grandmother," Anna began, but Vedena raised a gnarled hand. "I know what you have found," she said, and her voice was like the crackling of dry leaves, ancient, wise, and utterly without surprise. "I have been waiting for this day since the day you were born." Olga stepped forward, the wooden book clutched to her chest like a shield. "Grandmother, what is it? The symbols, they moved. They sang to me. I heard them." Vedena set down her spoon and closed her eyes. For a long, suspended moment, the only sounds were the crackling of the fire and the distant, carefree song of a finch outside the window. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, heavy with the weight of centuries. "When I was a girl," she said. Younger even than you, Olga. My grandmother showed me this book. She called it The Runes of the Rod. It has been in our family since before there were families, since the gods walked among us, and the earth still remembered the footsteps of Svarog, the creator. It has passed from mother to daughter, from daughter to granddaughter, through wars and famines and the coming of the new faith. And now it has come to you. Anna found her voice, though it cracked at the edges. But what does it do? Vedena opened her eyes. There was a weight in them that Anna had never seen before, an ancient grief, a knowledge so vast and so terrible that it seemed to press down on the very air of the kitchen. It remembers, Vedena said. That is what it does. It remembers the old words, the old power, the old names. Our people were not always Christians, Anna. We were not always subjects of princes and boyars. Once we were free. Once we knew the names of the stars and the language of the trees. Once the gods spoke to us directly, in the wind, in the fire, in the rush of water over stone. This book holds the echo of those voices. The runes, Olga breathed. The runes of the gods' writing. Vedena nodded slowly. Long before the Greeks brought their faith to our shores, we had our own way of marking the world. Not the beautiful, orderly letters of the monks, but something older, rougher, more alive. The Chernyakov people carved them into their pottery. The wise ones of Bohemia scratched them into bone. We called them certi irezi, lines and cuts, the building blocks of creation itself. She rose from her chair, and Anna was struck again by how tall her grandmother was, how unbent by the weight of decades. Vedena crossed to the table where the book lay, and she touched it with a reverence that made Anna's breath catch. This book contains every rune, Vedena said. Every sound, every meaning, every power. But more than that, it contains the memory of our people, our triumphs, our sorrows, our hopes. When a person of our blood touches it, they can feel those memories. They can hear the echoes of our ancestors. Olga was trembling. Anna saw it, the fine tremor in her sister's hands, the way her eyes had grown dark and luminous, as if lit from within. Grandmother, Olga whispered, I touched it. I felt it. I heard it singing. Vedena's face softened. She crossed to her younger granddaughter and took both her hands, her papery skin warm and dry. Yes, my dear, yes, because you have the sight. The gift of our blood, passed down through generations, hidden and waiting for the moment it would be needed. What gift? Anna demanded, though a cold certainty was already coiling in her stomach. What is the sight? Vedena looked at her eldest granddaughter, and something flickered in her pale eyes. Pride, perhaps, or sorrow, or a warning too terrible to speak aloud. You do not have it, Anna, she said gently, and in some ways that is a blessing. The sight is a heavy burden. It allows one to see beyond the veil of this world, to glimpse what is, what was, and what might be. Olga sees things that are not yet, that may never be. She hears the whisper of the gods. She moves in the realm of spirit as easily as you move through the forest. But the price of such seeing is high. It isolates you. It frightens you. It shows you the shape of your own death before you have lived your life. Anna felt a sharp, unwelcome stab of something she could not name. Jealousy? Perhaps. But also fear. A deep, primal fear that her sister was being drawn into a world where Anna could not follow. A world where the old powers might devour them both. "Show us," Olga pleaded, her voice eager now. "Show us the runes. Teach us what they mean." Vidana studied her granddaughter for a long, searching moment, and then she nodded slowly. "Very well. But you must understand, this knowledge is not a game. It is not a story to be told around the fire. It is power. And power, in the wrong hands, is the most dangerous thing in the world." She returned to the table and opened the book. The wooden boards creaked, and as they parted, a wave of warmth washed through the room. Not the stifling heat of the fire, but something deeper, older, like the sun on a winter morning or the embrace of a loved one long gone. "The runes," Vidana said, "are not merely symbols. They are forces, the building blocks of the universe. When we carve them into wood or stone, when we speak them aloud, we are calling upon these forces. We are asking them to work with us, to bend the world according to our will." She pointed to a symbol that resembled a cross with its arms curved upward like wings. "This is the rune of fire. We call it Krada. It is the rune of sacrifice and transformation. When something is given to the fire, it is not destroyed. It is changed, made new, purified." Anna leaned closer. The rune seemed to pulse, a slow, rhythmic beat like a second heart. "Krada," she repeated, and the word sent a shiver down her spine. Vidana smiled. "Yes, you can feel it, can't you? Even without the sight, you can feel it. The runes are not separate from us. They are part of us, written into our blood, carved into our bones." "And this one?" Olga pointed to a jagged, twisting symbol that looked like a path winding through a forest. "The rune of the way," Vidana said. "Raduga, the rainbow. It connects all things, all places, all times. When you follow the path of Raduga, you cannot get lost. It will always lead you where you need to go." Olga's hand drifted toward the rune, drawn as if by an invisible thread. Anna lunged to stop her, but she was too late. Olga's fingers brushed the carved wood. The room exploded into light. Chapter 3. Through the Veil. The light was unlike anything Anna had ever known. It was not the warm gold of the sun, nor the cold silver of the moon, nor the ruddy flicker of firelight. It was a searing, infinite white that seemed to peel away the very fabric of the world, layer by layer, until nothing remained but the light itself. And beneath the light was a sound, a roar like 1,000 rivers crashing together, a chorus of voices chanting in a language older than speech. And beneath the sound was a voice, clear and terrible and achingly familiar. The rod remembers. The rod remembers. The rod remembers. Anna felt herself falling. Not downward, but sideways, outward, her body dissolving into the white roar, her thoughts scattering like leaves in a gale. She reached out, grasping for something, anything, but there was nothing to hold. The floor was gone. The walls were gone. Even the warmth of the fire had vanished, replaced by an emptiness so vast and cold that it made her mind recoil in primal terror. She was not falling. She was flying, soaring through a void that stretched in all directions, a darkness studded with points of light that might have been stars, or might have been the eyes of something watching, something ancient and ravenous. "Olga!" she screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the abyss. "Grandmother!" And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light dimmed. The roaring faded to a distant murmur. The voice fell silent. Anna opened her eyes. She was lying on her back in a forest that was not her forest. The trees here were colossal, their trunks so wide that 3 men holding hands could not have encircled them. Their branches interlaced far above, forming a canopy that filtered the light into a soft greenish gloom. The roots twisted through the earth like the limbs of sleeping giants, and the air was thick with the smell of pine, damp moss, and something else. Something that might have been wild honey, or might have been fresh blood. Anna sat up slowly, her head throbbing with a dull, nauseating ache. She had no idea how long she had been unconscious. It might have been moments. It might have been days. "Olga!" she called again, and this time there was an answer. "Here, Anna, I'm here." Olga emerged from behind the trunk of a massive oak, her face pale, her hair wild, but her eyes were blazing with an unearthly fire. She was alive. She was whole. But there was something different about her, something that made Anna's blood run cold. "Where are we?" Anna demanded, scrambling to her feet. "What happened?" Olga shook her head slowly, as if waking from a deep dream. "I don't know. The rune, I touched it, and then we were here. I saw a woman in the light. She spoke to me. She said we were summoned." "Grandmother? Did she come with us?" "No." Olga's voice was small now, frightened. "I don't think so. I think it was just us." Anna's mind raced, grasping for logic, for anchor. She was a practical woman, a woman of the hearth and the field. She had no patience for magic, no interest in the mystical. And yet, here she was, standing in a forest that defied all reason, separated from everything she knew and loved. "We need to find our way back," she said firmly, forcing certainty into her voice. "Before night falls. This forest is not safe. I can feel it in my bones." Olga was staring into the depths of the wood, her eyes glazed with that familiar, distant look. "Anna," she whispered, "there's a house, a hut. I can see it." "There's no hut," Anna said, but even as the words left her mouth, she saw it. Or rather, she saw the impossible shape of it in the shadows between the trees. It was a hut. A small, crooked hut with a roof of moss and a chimney that leaned drunkenly to one side. But that was not the strangest thing about it. The strangest thing was that it was standing on chicken legs. Anna's breath caught in her throat. She knew this story. Everyone knew this story. It was the tale grandmothers told to frighten naughty children, the story of the creature who lived at the edge of the world, who feasted on the foolish and the unwary. "Baba Yaga," she breathed, "the witch of the woods." But Olga was not afraid. Olga was smiling, a slow, knowing smile that sat strangely on her young face. "No," she said softly, "not a witch. Something older. Something our grandmothers' knew. We are not in danger here, Anna. We are expected." And as she spoke, the hut turned on its chicken legs, facing them with a creak of ancient wood and sinew, and the door swung open, revealing a darkness that was not empty, but waiting. Chapter 4. The Hag's Hollow. Anna had always believed that courage was a thing you held in your chest, like a shield, something you could tighten your grip on when the world grew dark. She had stood at her mother's bedside as the life faded from those gentle eyes, had lifted her chin and refused to weep until the grave was filled. She had faced the winter's hunger with gritted teeth and clever hands, had bartered with hard-eyed merchants and beaten back the advances of drunken suitors. She had kept her family's household running through years of loss and silence. But this was something else entirely. The interior of the hut was far larger than its crooked exterior should have allowed. That was the first impossible thing. The second was the woman who sat at the heart of it, enthroned on a stool that might have been carved from a single massive femur, yellowed, polished, its ends capped with iron. The walls were lined with bundles of dried herbs, animal skulls, and jars that contained things Anna did not wish to name. A fire burned in a central hearth, but its flames were blue and green, and they cast no shadow. Baba Yaga was not what Anna had expected. She had pictured a crone bent with age, with a nose like a hawk's beak and a thirst for human blood. But this woman, for all her obvious antiquity, possessed a fierce and terrible beauty. Her hair was white as winter snow, but thick as a warrior's mane, swept back from a high forehead. Her face was lined with 1,000 years of wisdom, the skin leathery but strong, the bones beneath sharp and elegant. Her eyes were not yellow, as the stories claimed, but a deep, luminous gold, the colour of amber, of autumn honey, of the sun bleeding through forest fire, and one of her legs was made of bone. Anna tried not to stare, but it was impossible. The leg was a long, articulated structure of ivory, jointed like a bird's, ending in a foot that might have been a claw. Yet it moved with the same grace and strength as a natural limb, bearing the woman's weight as she rose to greet them. "Ah," she said, and her voice was not the cackle of legend, but something musical, something that might have been the sound of wind through autumn leaves, or the distant murmur of a stream over stones. "The daughters of the rod. I wondered when you would find your way here." Olga stepped forward. She was trembling, but her voice was steady. Too steady, as if she was speaking in a dream. "You knew we would come?" Baba Yaga smiled, and there was something almost warm in it, though it did not reach her golden eyes. "I have known since before you were born, child. I have seen your thread in the loom of fate, yours and your sister's. You with your wild eyes and your uncanny sight. And you," she turned to Anna, "with your steady hands and your stubborn heart. Together you are more than the sum of your parts. Together you are the rod." "The rod?" Anna repeated, her throat dry. "What is the rod?" Grandmother spoke of the runes, but she never explained. "Sit," Baba Yaga interrupted, waving a hand. "Eat, drink. You have come a long way, even if you do not yet understand the distance you have travelled." She gestured to a table that Anna could have sworn had not been there a moment before. It was laden with food, dark rye bread, a bowl of golden honey, fruit that glowed with an inner light, and a steaming pot of something that smelled like heaven. Roasted roots, wild garlic, and a hint of something smoky and sweet. Olga sat without hesitation, her hunger overriding her caution. But Anna remained standing, her hand resting on the wooden book at her belt, watching their hostess with wary eyes. "Who are you?" she asked. "Not the witch of the stories, not the monster who eats children. Who are you truly?" Baba Yaga's golden eyes fixed on her, and for a long, breathless moment, Anna felt as if she were being weighed, measured, found either wanting or worthy. The air between them thickened, and Anna could hear her own heartbeat, slow and heavy, like a drum in a burial mound. Once, the old woman said slowly, I was a goddess. The people of this land worshipped me, not in fear, but in gratitude. I was the protector of children, the guardian of boundaries, the keeper of the gateway between worlds. I was called Baba Yaga, the grandmother who guides the young into wisdom. But the new faith came, and the old names were twisted. I became a hag, a devourer, a thing to be feared. The people forgot that I was also the one who held the door between life and death, who taught the first healers, who whispered the names of the stars to the first poets. Olga stopped eating, her bread halfway to her lips. Goddess? But grandmother said the old gods were dead. Your grandmother is a wise woman, Baba Yaga said, but even she does not know all the truth. The truth is buried, child, buried deep beneath the mud of centuries. When the new faith came to this land, the old gods were not destroyed. They were transformed, made into monsters, so that people would forget the love they once inspired. I became a nightmare for children, a threat to the foolish. And in time, even I began to believe the stories they told about me. She rose from her stool and paced across the hut's impossibly large floor, her bone leg clicking softly against the earth. I was not always a hag. I was a mother once, and a maiden, and a crone. All the faces of the goddess who watches over the cycle of life. But the people forgot that. They remembered only my fierceness, my strangeness, my bony leg. They called me evil, and I let them because it was easier than fighting. Anna felt something shift inside her, a deep, ancient pity that surprised her. Why are you telling us this? Because you need to understand, Baba Yaga said, stopping before her. You cannot wield the power of the rod without understanding the nature of the power. The runes are not just letters, girls. They are the voices of the old gods, the whispers of the ancestors, the breath of the earth itself. When you use them, you are calling upon forces that are older than your people, older than this world. And they will answer, but they will also demand a price. She reached into the folds of her robe and withdrew something small and dark. It was a pendant, a disc of black iron, carved with a serpent that coiled around its own tail, its twin heads facing in opposite directions. The metal was warm to the touch, as if it had been held in a living hand for a long, long time. This is a Slavic, Baba Yaga said, placing the pendant in Olga's open palm. An amulet of the old faith. It will protect you from the darkness that gathers at the edges of the world, the forces that seek to extinguish the old ways, to turn the land into a graveyard of memory. I give one to each of you. She produced a second pendant and pressed it into Anna's hand. The metal pulsed with a faint, steady heartbeat against her skin, and Anna felt a sudden, dizzying warmth spread through her chest, as if the serpent had coiled itself around her very soul. Wear them always, Baba Yaga said. Do not remove them even to bathe. The forces that hunt you are patient and clever. They will try to find you, to turn you from your path, to make you doubt yourselves. Do not let them. What path? Anna asked, though she suspected she already knew. Baba Yaga's smile was terrible and beautiful. The path of the rod. The path that will lead you to the ones who are meant to stand with you. The path that will decide the fate of this land, and perhaps many others beyond it. She gestured to a large earthenware bowl that sat in the corner of the hut, its rim crusted with dried salt and something that might have been rust. It was filled with water, but not the clear, bright water of a spring. This water was dark, almost black, and it seemed to swallow the light around it, drawing it inward like a starved thing. Come, Baba Yaga said. Look into the water. See what the gods have waiting for you. Olga approached first, her steps eager, her eyes already glazing with that familiar distance. She peered into the bowl, and Anna saw her sister's face change, the flush of excitement, the widening of her pupils, the trembling of her lips. I see, Olga began, her voice dreamy, threaded with wonder. I see a warrior, a great bear of a man, with a sword that glows like the dawn. He is fighting the Iron Men, the ones from the east, with their curved swords and their painted faces. He is beautiful. Anna felt a chill run down her spine. Olga? He speaks to the wolves, Olga continued, her voice rising. I can hear them howling around him. They call him brother. His name, I can almost hear it. Dobrynya. Yes, Dobrynya. He is the shield of the forest, the friend of the wild things. Baba Yaga nodded, apparently satisfied. Your sight is strong, child. You have seen your destined one. Now, sister, it is your turn. Anna did not want to look. She did not want to see some stranger in a bowl of water, to have her future decided by something as mysterious and uncontrollable as magic. But Olga was watching her, and Baba Yaga was watching her, and the darkness of the water seemed to call to her with a voice she could not refuse. She stepped forward and looked into the bowl. The water was cold, colder than it should have been, cold as a winter stream. For a moment she saw nothing but her own reflection, pale and frightened. Then the image rippled, and she was looking at a man, not a giant like Olga's warrior, but something more refined, more measured. He had the broad shoulders of a veteran soldier, the calloused hands of a craftsman, and eyes the colour of the winter sky, grey and clear and full of hidden fire. He was fighting too, not against the Iron Men of the East, but against something older, something more terrible, a beast that might have been a man, but whose body was covered in feathers and scales and things that should not exist in the natural world. Its face was a mask of rage and hunger, and its claws were long as daggers. And the warrior, Ratisbor, she heard, though the name came from somewhere deep inside her own bones, fought it with a calm, terrible grace, his sword flashing, his shield raised. Ratisbor, the voice whispered, the lover of wisdom, the shield of his people. He is waiting for you. Anna pulled back from the water, her heart pounding, her breath shallow. You see, Baba Yaga said softly, the road is set before you. These men are your fated ones, not in the way of poets and songs, but in the way of the old world. They are warriors, and they are needed. The land grows dark, girls. The old ways are fading, and in their place comes not light, but something darker, something that will swallow the world if it is not stopped. What must we do? Olga asked, her voice fierce. Baba Yaga leaned forward, her golden eyes burning like twin suns. You must go to them. You must find them, and you must join with them. Together, the four of you will be able to harness the full power of the rod. Together, you can raise a shield that will protect this land from the darkness that gathers at its borders, and from the deeper darkness that waits beyond. Anna shook her head. We are just girls. 2 girls from a village in the middle of nowhere. We can't fight warriors. We can't raise shields. We can't... You can, Baba Yaga said, and her voice was suddenly hard, harder than iron, harder than the bone of her leg. You are daughters of the rod, children of the old ways. The runes live in your blood, in your bones, in the very essence of your being. You are not just girls, Anna. You are the last hope of a dying world, and dying worlds do not have the luxury of doubt. She stood, and the hut seemed to grow smaller around her, as if her presence alone had been holding it together. The fire flared and the shadows danced. "I have given you a task," she said. "Go to Kiev. The city is under threat. The Pechenegs, the people of the steppe, are gathering at the gates. Your warriors will be there. You will find them, and you will do what must be done. The gods have chosen you. Do not disappoint them." Anna opened her mouth to protest, but before she could speak, the world shifted around her, and the darkness of the hut swallowed them whole. Chapter 5. The Road to Kiev. Anna opened her eyes to find herself standing in a field. It was not the field of magic and wonder that Baba Yaga's hut had occupied. No impossible trees, no chicken-legged houses, no golden-eyed goddesses. This was an ordinary field, the kind she had known all her life. Golden wheat swaying in the warm breeze, the distant cry of a hawk, the rich, solid smell of the earth. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear the lowing of cattle and the barking of dogs. The sun was high, and the sky was a clear, untroubled blue. "Anna," Olga said, and there was a wonder in her voice. "We're back. We're home." Anna looked around, her heart racing. The forest was gone. The hut was gone. They were standing on the outskirts of a village she recognized, one of the many small settlements that dotted the road to Kiev. They had passed through it before, on their father's trading trips, buying salt and linen and dried fish. "How did we get here?" she demanded, her voice sharper than she intended. "One moment we were in that hut, and the next—" "The runes," Olga said, a note of confidence in her voice. "Baba Yaga must have woven a path for us. The rune of the way, Raduga. She used it to send us here. I felt it, Anna. It was like being pulled through water, but faster and warm." Anna pressed her fingers to her temples. "This is impossible. This is all impossible. Magic, gods, journeying across impossible distances." "You saw the man in the water," Olga interrupted, her eyes blazing. "We both saw them. You can't tell me that was a dream, Anna. You felt it, the same as me. They are real. The warriors, the danger, all of it." Anna wanted to argue. She wanted to insist that this was a trick, an illusion, some feverish fantasy born of exhaustion and the oppressive heat of the attic. But the Zmivik against her skin was warm and solid, and the wooden book Baba Yaga had pressed into her hands before they left, she had not noticed it until now, but there it was, clutched in her fingers, the runes pulsing with a faint, steady light. "They are real," she said at last, her voice flat. "But that doesn't mean we have to—" "It means everything." Olga's voice was fierce, her face flushed. "Did you hear what she said? The old ways are dying. The gods are being forgotten. If we don't act, the darkness will swallow everything. Our children, our grandchildren, everyone who comes after us. They will never know the truth. They will live in a world of shadows, a world where the old songs are just forgotten noise." Anna stared at her sister. For all her wildness, for all her flights of fancy, Olga had never spoken so passionately about anything. She had always been the dreamer, the one who drifted through life on currents of imagination. But now, for the first time, Anna saw a purpose in her sister's eyes, a determination that was almost frightening in its intensity. "Fine," she said, the word tasting like ash. "Fine. We'll go to Kiev. We'll find these warriors. But we do this my way. We take supplies. We ask questions. We don't just charge into danger and hope for the best." Olga's smile was radiant, and she threw her arms around Anna in a sudden, fierce hug. "I knew you'd see reason. You always do in the end. Anna shook her head, but she allowed herself a small, reluctant smile. I see practicality. There is a difference. They walked toward the village, and as they approached the first huts, Anna thought about what lay ahead. Kiev. She had heard stories about the city, the great wooden walls, the sprawling market, the throng of people from all corners of the known world. Her father had spoken of it often, with a mixture of pride and unease. It was a place of power and danger, a place where fortunes were made and lost in the span of a single season. And the warriors, the men she had seen in the vision. Ratisbor. The name echoed in her mind, strange and yet somehow familiar, as if she had known it in a dream. She knew, with a certainty that defied all logic, that he was waiting for her. The thought sent a shiver through her, half fear, half something else, something she dared not name. Where do we start? Olga asked, her eyes scanning the village. We ask for directions, Anna said. We need to know which way to go, and we need to… She stopped. There was a woman sitting on a stool outside one of the huts, a woman she had not noticed until that moment. She was old, older than the village itself, it seemed, with hair the colour of iron and eyes that were pale and depthless, like winter skies. She was not looking at them, she was staring at them, with the intense, unblinking gaze of someone who knew exactly who they were and what they carried. Daughters of the rod, the woman said, her voice dry as old parchment. I have been waiting for you. Anna's hand went to the Zmivik at her throat. Who are you? The woman smiled, and it was a sad smile, weighted with grief and wisdom, and something that might have been fear. I am no one important, just a woman who knows the old songs. I saw you come from the other place, from the realm of the goddess. I heard her voice in my sleep, telling me to wait for you here. Olga stepped forward, her eyes bright. Then you know our mission. You know what we carry. The woman nodded slowly. I know, and I know the road you must walk. But the path is not safe, girls. The Pechenegs are gathering near the river. The Khazars have sent their emissaries to the cities of the south, stirring up trouble. And there are others, darker things, that sense the power you bear. They will try to stop you. They will try to take the book from us, Anna said, not a question. Yes, they will try to claim the power for themselves. The woman rose, and Anna saw that she was ancient, far older than she had first appeared. Her back bent, her hands gnarled, her skin like cracked leather. But there are those who will help you, the warriors you seek. They are already fighting for the land. And there are others, many others, who still remember the old gods, who still sing the old songs, who will defend the rod with their lives. She reached into the folds of her garment and produced a small leather pouch, its drawstring tied with a red thread. Take this. It contains a special mix of herbs, wormwood, mugwort, and a root that has no name in your tongue. It will give you protection and strength when you need it most. It will help you find your way, for a few days at least, even if the path is hidden from sight. Anna hesitated for only a moment before taking the pouch. It was warm against her palm, as if it had been kept close to the woman's heart. Thank you, she said. We are in your debt. The old woman shook her head. No debt, child. I am only doing what the goddess commanded. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer, more gentle, and somehow more terrible. But I must tell you one thing. The journey will not be easy. Your bond, the bond between you sisters, will be tested. The darkness will try to turn you against one another. It will whisper lies in your ears, show you false visions, make you doubt each other. You must not let that happen. You must stand together, or you will fall together. Anna felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. She looked at Olga, who had gone pale, her eyes wide. "We will not let that happen," Anna said firmly. "We are sisters. Nothing will break that." The old woman smiled again, but there was something in her eyes that suggested she did not believe it entirely. "I hope you are right," she said. "I truly hope you are right." Chapter 6. The Place of Waters. The journey to Kiev took longer than Anna had expected. The old woman had given them directions, but the paths were strange and winding, and the landmarks she described did not always match the reality of the countryside. They walked for 3 days through rolling hills and dense forests, crossing streams that were not on any map, sleeping under the stars, with only each other for warmth. But they pressed on. They had to. The longer they walked, the more Anna felt the weight of their mission pressing down on her shoulders. It was not just the book, the runes of the rod, as Baba Yaga had called it. It was the zmiviki around their necks, the herbs in their pouches, the strange crackling energy that seemed to follow them wherever they went, a presence just beyond the edge of sight. And it was the dreams. Every night Anna dreamed of him, Ratisbor, the warrior from the water. He was not just a man, she realized. He was a force of nature, a whirlwind of muscle and iron and terrible burning light. In her dreams, he fought against impossible odds, his sword flashing in the darkness, his voice raised in a cry of defiance that made the stars tremble. And she was always beside him, not as a shadow, but as a partner, an equal. They fought together, and the runes blazed around them like a crown of fire. She woke each morning feeling more connected to him, even though she had never seen his face in the waking world. "It's the same for me," Olga admitted one evening, as they made camp in a small clearing. The fire crackled between them, throwing dancing shadows against the trees. "I see him, Dobrynya. He is so strong, Anna, so fierce. And yet there is gentleness in him too, a softness that he hides from the world. He speaks to the beasts, you know. The wolves love him. The eagles call him brother." Anna shook her head, a rueful smile on her lips. "This is madness. We are 2 girls from a village, dreaming of warriors we've never met. There must be some logical explanation." Olga laughed, a bright, unburdened sound. "There is an explanation. We are bound to them. The rod, the runes, the old gods. They have chosen these men for us. We are meant to be together. And what if we find them and they reject us? What if they think we're just 2 mad girls who wandered in from the woods?" Olga's smile faded, and her eyes grew distant again. "They won't reject us. I know they won't. I've seen it, Anna. I've seen the future. We will stand together, all 4 of us, and we will save this land. But there is something else, something I haven't told you." Anna felt a prickle of unease. "What?" Olga lowered her voice, as if the trees themselves might be listening. "In the vision, after the battle, after the shield, I saw a shadow that swallowed everything, the trees, the rivers, the memories of the old gods. It was coming from the east, and it was ancient, Anna. Older than Baba Yaga, older than the grove. It wanted to erase everything we have done." Anna reached out and took her sister's hand. "Then we will stop it. We have to. There's no other option." Olga squeezed back, but her face was still troubled. "I hope you're right, Anna. I really do." The next morning they reached the river. It was a wide, slow-moving body of water, its surface shimmering like hammered silver in the late afternoon light. On the far bank, Anna could see the walls of a city, great wooden palisades, towers topped with banners that snapped in the wind, and beyond them, the glint of golden domes. "Kiev," she breathed. "We made it." Olga was already wading into the water, her skirts held high above her knees. "Come on, we're almost there." Anna followed, the cold water lapping at her legs, the current tugging at her feet. The river was deeper than it looked, and the bottom was slick with mud and stones, but she pressed on, her eyes fixed on the distant walls. She could see people moving along the ramparts, and the sound of voices drifted across the water. Shouts, laughter, the clatter of carts. And then she heard something else. A cry of alarm, the blare of a horn, deep and urgent. And then the unmistakable clash of iron, swords meeting shields, men shouting, horses screaming. "Pechenegs," Olga gasped, her face going pale. "They're attacking the city." Anna's heart lurched. She had never seen a battle. She had heard stories, of course. Her father had told her many tales of the wars along the river, but she had never witnessed the reality of it. Now, as she stumbled toward the shore, she saw the smoke rising from the city walls, black and greasy against the blue sky. She heard the shouts of warriors, the crash of battering rams, the screams of the dying. "We have to help," Olga cried. "Anna, we have to do something." But what could they do? They were just girls, just two sisters who had stumbled into a world of magic and myth. They had no weapons, no armor, no training. They could barely control the power that simmered in their blood. But even as the thought crossed her mind, Anna felt the book at her belt grow warm, warmer than it had ever been. She pulled it out, and the runes were blazing, pulsing with a light that was almost blinding. The symbols writhed and danced across the wooden boards, and a voice, the same voice from the darkness, whispered in her ear. "The rod remembers. The rod remembers. The rod remembers." And then she saw him. A man, larger than life, standing on the walls of Kiev. His armor was battered and blood-stained, his shield notched and scarred, but he fought with the strength of 10 men, his sword carving a path through the pechenegs that swarmed against the gates. He was everywhere at once, a whirlwind of steel and fury, his voice rising in a battle cry that echoed across the river. Ratisbor. He was real. He was here. Anna felt a surge of power flow through her, a power that had no origin and no explanation. It was just there, rushing through her veins, lighting her blood on fire, filling her with a strength she had never known. She raised the book, and the runes began to speak. "Krada," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Rune of the fire, wake and burn." A pillar of flame erupted in the middle of the enemy host, a column of white-hot fire that seemed to reach up to the heavens themselves. The pechenegs scattered like leaves before a gale, their screams lost in the roar of the inferno. Olga was beside her, her eyes blazing with their own inner fire. She did not speak, but Anna could feel her sister's power flowing into her, merging with her own, creating something that was greater than the sum of its parts. Together, they were a storm. A hurricane of ancient magic that swept across the battlefield, driving the enemy back, breaking their lines. And then the army of Kiev charged through the gates, and the tide of battle turned. Anna watched Ratisbor leap from the walls, his sword flashing in the firelight. She saw Dobrynya, the bear-like warrior from Olga's vision, transform before her eyes into a wolf, a creature of fur and fang and terrible grace, his howl rising above the din. And she saw the pechenegs fall back, their courage broken by the sight of their own magic turning against them. "Anna," Olga said, her voice tired but triumphant. We did it. We helped them. Anna lowered the book. The runes were still glowing, but the fire had faded. The battle was over. But she knew, with a certainty that went beyond reason, that this was just the beginning. Chapter 7. The Shield of the City. The Dnieper's cold embrace clung to Anna's woolen tunic as she stumbled onto the muddy bank, her lungs burning with exertion and the acrid scent of victory, smoke, blood, and the strange electric tang of spent magic. The water streamed from her braid and dripped down her neck, but she barely felt it. Her entire body trembled with the aftershock of the power she had unleashed, a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to hum in her very marrow. The wooden walls of Kiev loomed before her, blackened in patches where the Pecheneg fire arrows had struck, but still standing, still defiant. The great gates groaned open, and a river of humanity poured out. Warriors in battered mail, women clutching children, old men with faces carved by grief and relief. But Anna's eyes searched for only one face. She found him striding through the throng, and her heart seized. Ratisbor moved with the rolling gait of a man who had worn armour since adolescence, his broad shoulders carrying the weight of a shield that bore the scars of 100 battles. His mail was dented and dark with dried blood, some his own, she suspected, from the way he favoured his left side. A gash ran from his temple to his jaw, still weeping a thin trickle of crimson. His face was gaunt, shadowed by exhaustion, but his eyes, those winter-grey eyes she had seen in the water and in her dreams, burned with an unquenchable fire. He stopped 3 paces from her, his gaze moving from Anna to Olga and back again. Recognition flickered across his features, followed by something that might have been astonishment, and then, unexpectedly, a crack of wry humour. "You are the ones," he said, his voice like gravel rolled in river water. "The ones who came from the river. You burned the Pechenegs with—" He gestured vaguely at the air. "Whatever that was. I saw the pillar of flame from the walls. It touched the clouds." Anna's hand went to the book still tucked in her belt, its wooden boards warm against her hip. "We did what we had to do." He laughed, a short, surprised bark that made several nearby warriors turn their heads. "Just 2 girls," he said, shaking his head slowly. 2 girls, and yet you called fire from the sky. My grandmother used to tell tales of the old powers. I thought they were just fables, stories to frighten children into staying close to the hearth at night. But this... His eyes dropped to the book, then rose to meet hers. "This is no fable." Anna lifted her chin, forcing herself to meet that piercing gaze. "We are the daughters of the rod. We carry the old knowledge, the power of our ancestors, and we have come to help." Ratisbor studied her for a long, breathless moment. The sounds of the city, the weeping, the shouting, the hammering of repairs, faded into a dull roar as Anna felt the weight of his attention. He was not just a warrior, she realized. He was a leader, a man accustomed to bearing the burdens of others. She could see it in the set of his jaw, the quiet authority that radiated from him like warmth from a forge. "Come," he said at last, his voice gentler now. "You will be safer inside the walls. The Pechenegs have retreated, but they will return. They always return. It is the way of the steppe people. They test the walls, they bleed us, they retreat, and they come again. But tonight, at least, you will have bread and a dry place to sleep." He led them through the gates, and Anna stepped into Kiev. The city was not what she had imagined. Her father's tales had painted pictures of golden domes and stone palaces, of merchants in silk and warriors in gleaming mail. But the reality was something humbler, more desperate, and infinitely more alive. The buildings were mostly wood, their roofs of thatch or clay, blackened by smoke and age. The streets were deep in mud, churned by the hooves of horses and the feet of 1,000 fleeing citizens. But even in the aftermath of battle, there was a fierce, stubborn energy here. Women tending to the wounded in makeshift camps, children running errands with grim-faced determination, old men dragging broken carts out of the way of the healing crews. The smell of blood and smoke was everywhere, laced with the sharp tang of wood ash and the greasy odour of rendered fat from the fires that still smouldered in the outer quarters. Anna tried not to look at the rows of dead laid out along the main road. Men and women both, their faces pale and slack, their eyes staring at a sky they would never see again. Olga reached out and gripped Anna's arm, her fingers cold. "So many," she whispered. "I saw them in my visions, but I didn't feel it." Anna squeezed her sister's hand. "That's what war is, Olga. That's what it has always been." Ratisbor led them to a modest house near the city's centre, its walls of squared logs, its roof steeply pitched to shed the winter snow. Inside, a fire crackled in a stone hearth, and the warmth was a welcome relief from the chill of the river. The room was sparsely furnished, a table, a bench, a narrow bed in the corner, but it was clean and it was safe. "This is my home," Ratisbor said, his voice quiet. "It is not much, but it is dry, and I have bread and honey in the larder. Stay here tonight. I must report to the prince's council. The boyars are in a panic, and they will need to hear what happened at the walls." "Prince Sviatoslav?" Olga asked, her eyes bright. "Is he here?" Ratisbor shook his head, a shadow crossing his face. "The prince is on campaign against the Khazars, far to the east. He left the city in the hands of his mother, Princess Olga. She is a strong woman, and she has kept us together through much hardship. But she is not well. Her health has been failing these past months. The Pechenegs sensed our weakness, and they struck while the prince was away." Anna felt a pang of pity. She knew what it was like to lead in the face of loss, to carry the weight of a people's hopes on shoulders that were already bowed with grief. "Where can we find the princess?" "In the palace on the hill, but you cannot see her now. She is too weak, and the healers have forbidden visitors." Ratisbor's eyes met Anna's. "But you will meet her, I think. If the power you carry is real, and I have seen it with my own eyes, she will want to know about it." Olga stepped forward, her voice fierce. "It is real. We showed you. We burned the Pechenegs with fire from the sky." "And we nearly burned ourselves alive doing it," Anna added, her voice sharp. "We have much to learn. We need guidance. Someone who understands the old ways, who can teach us how to control this power before it consumes us." Ratisbor was silent for a long moment, staring into the flames of the hearth. Then he nodded slowly. "There is someone. An old woman who lives at the edge of the city, near the river's bend. They call her the Wise One of the Dnieper. She was a priestess in the old days, before the Christians came. She remembers the songs, the rites, the names of the gods. If anyone can help you, it is her." "Where can we find her?" Anna asked. Ratisbor's lips curved in a faint, enigmatic smile. "She will find you. When the time is right, she will find you." He showed them where to sleep, laid out a small loaf of dark bread and a jar of honey on the table, and then he was gone, striding toward the palace on the hill, his shield still on his back, his stride unbroken despite his wounds. Anna and Olga sat down on the bench, their legs weak with exhaustion. The fire crackled, and the weight of the day pressed down on them like a stone. "Everything happened so fast," Olga said, her voice hollow. "One moment we were in the hut, and the next we were here, fighting in a war." It doesn't feel real. Anna wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the rough wool of her tunic against her skin. It's real. All of it. And there is more to come. I can feel it, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Olga looked at her sister, and her eyes were suddenly older, shadowed with a knowledge that sat uneasily on her young face. I saw something, Anna. In the vision, not just the warriors, but after. There was something dark coming from the east, something ancient and terrible, a shadow that swallowed the land. I didn't understand it then, but now I think I do. It was the same darkness Baba Yaga spoke of, the force that wants to erase the old ways forever. Anna reached out and took her sister's hand. Then we will stop it. We have to. There is no other option. Olga squeezed back, but her face was still troubled. I hope you're right, Anna. I truly do. That night, Anna dreamed of the forest again. The vast, ancient trees, the silver-eyed guardian, the rune that glowed like a second moon. And in the dream, she heard the voice of the goddess, whispering a name she had never heard before. Veles. The god of the wild things, the keeper of the underworld's gates, the weaver of the threads between life and death. He was waiting. They all were waiting. She woke with the name burning on her tongue, and she knew, with a certainty beyond reason, that their journey was far from over. Chapter 8. The Voices of the Dead. The next morning, Anna and Olga stepped into the heart of Kiev. The air was thick with the industry of survival. Women carried water from the river in heavy buckets. Men hammered new planks into the shattered gates. Children chased each other through the alleyways, their laughter a strange, defiant counterpoint to the grimness of the day before. Anna moved through the chaos with a watchful eye, her hand never straying far from the book at her belt. Everywhere they went, the whispers followed. The firebringers, the ones who called flame from the sky. Daughter of the old gods, they say. Their grandmother was a witch. They say the gods have returned to fight for us. Anna felt the prickle of unease crawl up her spine. She did not like being the subject of such talk, did not like the hungry, hopeful looks that followed her down the muddy streets. But Olga, of course, was alight with it. Did you hear? Olga said, her eyes shining. They're talking about us. They know what we did. We don't even know what we did, Anna muttered, stepping over a puddle of something she did not want to identify. We reacted. We did not think. If we try to do it again without understanding, we could burn ourselves alive, or worse. Olga waved her hand dismissively. We'll learn. We have the book. We have the herbs that the old woman gave us. We have the zmiviki. Everything we need is right here. Anna wanted to argue, but before she could speak, they rounded a corner and found themselves in a square crowded with warriors. These were not the battered survivors of yesterday's battle, but fresh troops, men in polished mail with bright shields and spears that glinted in the morning light. At the centre of the square, on a raised wooden platform, stood a man Anna did not recognize, robed in heavy furs despite the warmth. But Ratisbor was there, standing at the man's side. And beside Ratisbor stood another warrior, a giant truly, with a broad face like the prow of a warship, and warm brown eyes that seemed to hold the peace of the forests. He had the look of someone who had spent more time with the wild things than with men. Dobrynya, Olga breathed, her face flushing crimson. The giant turned, and his eyes met Olga's. Recognition flashed across his features, shock, wonder, and then a slow, dawning smile that transformed his rough face into something almost gentle. Olga, he said, and it was not a question. Olga stepped forward, her voice trembling. You know me. I know your face, Dobrynya said, shaking his head slowly. I have seen it in my dreams, 100 nights, maybe more. I thought I was losing my mind, haunted by a woman I had never met. But you are real. You are both real. Ratisbor stepped down from the platform and approached Anna. I told the boyars about you, he said quietly. They want to meet you. They want to see the fire. Anna's jaw tightened. We are not performers. We are not here to entertain the boyars with tricks. We are here to protect this land. Ratisbor's eyes softened. I know, and I told them that. But they are frightened, Anna. They saw what you did, and they do not understand it. They are men of the new faith. They were taught that the old powers are demons, that the gods of our ancestors are lies. And now they have seen a pillar of fire fall from the sky, called by two young women in soaked wool tunics. They want reassurance that you are not a threat to them. Anna considered this. The runes were not just weapons. They were memory, connection, the living breath of the ancestors. If the boyars were afraid, she needed to show them that the old ways were not a danger, but a salvation. Very well, she said. We will meet with them, but not here, in a place that is sacred, where the old powers can speak freely. Ratisbor nodded slowly. I know such a place. A hill by the river, where the ancient ones used to make their offerings to the sky and the earth. The Christians have tried to build a church there, but the stones refused to be moved. The foundations cracked, and the priests gave up. It is a liminal place, neither Christian nor pagan, neither holy nor profane. Anna felt a tremor of anticipation. Take us there, and bring the boyars if they have the courage to come. Chapter 9. The Hill by the River. The hill rose above the Dnieper like a gentle green swell, its slopes thick with wildflowers that nodded in the afternoon breeze. At its summit, the remains of an ancient stone circle still stood, great grey boulders, rough-hewn and weathered by centuries of wind and rain. The Christians had tried to build their church here, but the stones had refused to be dislodged, and the half-finished walls had crumbled into rubble, leaving only a ghost of their ambition. It was a place of silence and power. Anna could feel it as she climbed the slope, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through the soles of her feet and up into her bones. The boyars of Kiev had gathered at the base of the hill, a cluster of men in heavy furs and gilt-edged tunics. Their faces were a mixture of curiosity and fear, suspicion and grudging hope. Beside them stood the warriors, Ratisbor, Dobrynya, and a score of others who had fought at the gate. Anna and Olga walked to the centre of the stone circle, and Anna drew the book from her belt. The wooden boards were warm against her palms, and the runes were pulsing, a faint, steady light that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the earth itself. We have been called here, Anna said, her voice carrying across the hilltop, amplified by the strange acoustics of the stones. We have been called to witness the power of the old ways, the power that protected our ancestors, that kept the darkness at bay for 1,000 generations. That power is not dead. It is not a demon. It is the voice of the earth, the breath of the river, the memory of the stars. A murmur rippled through the crowd, but no one spoke. Anna opened the book, and the runes blazed. The sky darkened, not with clouds, but with a sudden, inexplicable dimness, as if the sun itself had been veiled by an unseen hand. The wind rose, whipping Anna's hair across her face, but she did not flinch. She raised her voice to the heavens. Rod of the ancestors, rod of the gods, rod of the people, we call upon you now. Show these men that you are not forgotten. Show them that the old ways are not dead, but sleeping, and you are waking. And the voices came. They rose from the river, from the stones, from the very soil beneath their feet, a chorus of ancient voices, speaking in a language older than any tongue of men. They told stories of the first winters, the first fires, the first songs. They spoke of the hero who had tamed the thunder and the maiden who had married the forest. They sang of the great bear who carried the world on his back and the serpent who guarded the roots of the cosmic tree. The boyars fell to their knees. The warriors clutched their shields, their faces pale. Ratisbor stared at Anna, his grey eyes wide, his mouth slightly open. And then the voices spoke of the shadow. The darkness from the east grows stronger. It has tasted the blood of the land, and it is hungry for more. It will not stop until the old gods are forgotten, until the songs are silenced, until the runes are dust. You must act, daughters of the rod. You must find the third rune, the rune of unity, the rune of the eternal bond. It lies in the heart of the old forest, in the place where the goddess walks. Bring it to this hill, and the shield will be raised, the land will be protected. The voices faded, and the sky brightened. The wind fell still. Anna closed the book, her hands trembling. The runes still pulsed, but the fire had banked to a gentle glow. Olga stepped beside her, her face pale but fierce. "The forest," she said. "The place where the goddess walks. We have to go there." Anna nodded slowly. "We will, but not alone. We need the warriors with us." Ratisbor stepped forward, his face set in a grim mask. "We will go with you, Dobrynya and I, and any who have the courage to follow. We have seen the truth now, Anna. We have heard the voices of our ancestors. Whatever it takes, we will stand with you." Anna looked at him, this man who had been a stranger just a day before, and felt a surge of something that might have been gratitude, might have been hope, might have been the first stirring of a love she had never expected to find. "Then let us prepare," she said, her voice steady, "and let us pray that the goddess is with us." Chapter 10. The Path of the Serpent. The forest lay to the north of Kiev, a vast, breathing expanse of ancient trees that stretched toward the misty lands of the Baltic tribes. It was called the Great Wood by the locals, and it was said that the old gods still walked there, hidden in the shadows of the oaks and the whispers of the pines. That if you listened closely enough, you could hear the footsteps of Veles, the horned god of the wild, and the laughter of the forest spirits who had never bowed to the new faith. Anna had travelled far from her village, farther than she had ever gone in her 19 years. But this was different. This was not a journey through the known world, along rivers and trade routes marked by familiar landmarks. This was a journey into the unknown, into the heart of the wild, where the old powers still held sway and the boundaries between worlds grew thin as worn linen. The first day was deceptively easy. The path was broad and well-trodden, used by hunters and woodcutters who ventured to the forest's edge. The oaks and birches stood tall but orderly, their leaves dappling the ground with shifting patterns of light and shadow. Birds sang in the canopy, and the air was fresh with the scent of pine and earth. But by the second day, the forest changed. The trees grew taller, impossibly tall, their trunks so wide that 3 men holding hands could not have encircled them. Their branches interlaced far above, forming a canopy that blocked out the sky, turning noon into twilight. The undergrowth thickened, choking the path with brambles and ferns, and the sounds of the forest grew strange. Not the familiar chirping of sparrows, but the low, resonant hoots of owls and the distant, echoing howl of wolves. "This place feels wrong," Dobrynya said, his voice low. He walked beside Olga, his hand resting on the hilt of his axe, his eyes scanning the shadows between the trees. I have travelled through many forests, from the Carpathians to the Baltic shores, but this one is different. It feels alive, watching us. Olga took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his calloused ones. It is alive, Dobrynya. That is what makes it sacred. This is the heart of the old world, the place where the veil is thinnest. The goddess walks here. Dobrynya's jaw tightened, but he did not argue. He had learned, in the days since the battle, to trust Olga's strange certainty, even when it frightened him. Ratisbor led the way, his shield slung across his back, his sword loose in its scabbard. He moved with a hunter's grace, his grey eyes missing nothing. The broken twig, the disturbed moss, the faint trail of something that might have been a wolf, or might have been something far older. Anna walked close behind him, her hand resting on the book at her belt, her zmivik warm against her skin. "What do you think we'll find?" Ratisbor asked quietly, his voice barely audible over the rustle of leaves. Anna shook her head. "I do not know. Baba Yaga spoke of the third rune, the rune of unity, but she did not say what guarded it, or what we would have to give to claim it. The visions are never clear. They show you a door, but not what lies beyond." "You think there is a trap?" "I think there is danger." Anna looked at him, and the worry in her eyes softened something in his guarded expression. The darkness that Baba Yaga spoke of, the shadow from the east, it is not just the pechenegs. They are a symptom, not the cause. There is something older behind them, something that wants the old ways forgotten forever. It will try to stop us. It will try to turn us against each other. Ratisbor was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the winding path ahead. "Then we will not let it. We have come this far, Anna. We have walked through fire together, quite literally. Whatever waits in that grove, we will face it as we faced the pechenegs. Together." That night, they made camp in a small clearing where the canopy opened to reveal a patch of star-scattered sky. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows against the trees, and the four of them sat in a loose circle, their faces lit by the warm glow. Dobrynya sat with his back to the flames, his bow across his knees, his eyes watchful. Olga was curled beside him, her head resting on his shoulder, her breath slow and even. She had fallen asleep, exhausted by the day's journey. Anna and Ratisbor sat opposite each other, the fire between them. The silence stretched, comfortable and full of unspoken things. "How did you become a warrior?" Anna asked at last, her voice soft. "I mean, not the duty, not the training. Why did you choose it?" Ratisbor smiled, a faint, wistful curve of his lips. "It was not a choice. My father was a warrior, and his father before him. The sons of our clan have always fought. It is our purpose, our inheritance. There was never a moment when I considered doing anything else." "But what did you want? When you were a boy, before the sword and the shield, what did you dream of?" Ratisbor considered the question, his grey eyes reflecting the flames. "I dreamed of peace," he said at last. "A land where fathers did not have to send their sons to war, where mothers did not have to weep for their fallen children. A land where the only harvest was grain, not blood." He shook his head, a rueful chuckle escaping him. "It is a foolish dream, I know, but it is what I wanted." Anna felt a surge of kinship so sharp it stole her breath. "It is not foolish," she said. "It is the best dream a warrior can have. To fight so that others do not have to. That is the noblest purpose I can imagine." Ratisbor looked at her, and the warmth in his gaze was like the first touch of spring after a long winter. "And you, Anna? What do you dream of?" Anna hesitated. The words felt too large, too fragile to speak aloud. But the fire was warm, and the night was quiet, and Ratisbor's eyes held no judgment. "I dream of keeping my family safe," she said. "My sister, my father, everyone I love. I dreamed of that even before the book, before the runes, before any of this. And now," she paused, searching for the right words, "now I dream of protecting this land, the land of our ancestors. I want the old ways to survive. I want the gods to be remembered. I want my children and their children to know the names of the stars and the language of the trees." Ratisbor reached across the fire and took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, warm and solid. "They will," he said, "because we will make sure of it." The fire crackled between them, and in that moment, Anna felt something shift in her chest. A bond forming that was not just duty, not just destiny, but something deeper, something that might have been love. Chapter 11. The Guardian of the Grove. On the third day, they reached the heart of the forest. The grove was a perfect circle of ancient oaks, their trunks so gnarled and moss-covered that they seemed more stone than wood. The canopy was so dense that no light reached the forest floor, and yet the air was filled with a soft, silvery glow, a luminescence that seemed to emanate from the very earth itself. At the centre of the circle stood a boulder, a great grey monolith that gleamed with an inner fire. And standing before the boulder was a woman. She was ancient, older than Baba Yaga, older than the forest, older than the memory of the gods themselves. Her hair was white as snow, cascading over her shoulders like a frozen waterfall. Her face was a map of 1,000 years, lined with wisdom and sorrow, and her eyes were the colour of the moon, pale, luminous, and utterly serene. She wore a robe of green and brown that seemed woven from moss and bark, and in her hand she carried a staff of gnarled oak, its tip adorned with a single glowing crystal. "I have been waiting for you," she said, and her voice was like the rustle of autumn leaves, soft and ancient and full of hidden meaning. Anna stepped forward, the book glowing in her hands, its runes pulsing in time with her heartbeat. "Who are you?" "I am the guardian of the grove," the woman said. "The keeper of the third rune, the rune of unity, the rune of the eternal bond. I have been here since the beginning, since the gods first walked the earth and the first songs were sung. You seek my treasure, but it will not come cheaply." Olga stepped forward, her chin raised in defiance. "What must we do?" The guardian smiled, a sad, knowing smile that held no malice. "You must prove yourselves worthy. Not by battle. Your courage has already been tested. Not by strength. Your power has already been shown. But by sacrifice. One of you must give up something precious, something that defines who you are. Only then will the rune reveal itself." Anna's heart sank. What must we give? The guardian looked at each of them in turn, her moon-pale eyes lingering on their faces. "You, Anna," she said, "must give up your fear. You have carried it like a shield your whole life, the fear of losing control, of failing those who depend on you, of stepping into the unknown without a map. You hold yourself back, always cautious, always measured. You must learn to trust the power that is within you, to let go of the control you cling to. Anna felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. What if I cannot? Then you will fail, the guardian said simply, and the darkness will consume everything you love. Your sister, your warrior, your land, your children. Fear is a cage, Anna. You must learn to open the door. Olga stepped forward, her voice fierce. And me? What must I give? The guardian studied her for a long, searching moment. You must give up your certainty, your belief that you can see the future, that you know what is coming. The sight is a gift, but it is also a curse. You have come to rely on it, to trust it above your own heart. But the future is not fixed, Olga. It is a river that branches and bends. You cannot always trust what you see. You must learn to live in the moment, to accept that not everything can be known. Olga's face paled, and she took a step back. But my visions are a guide, not a master, the guardian said. When you understand that, the rune will open to you. She turned to Ratisbor and Dobrynya. And you, warriors, you must give up your pride. You have spent your lives as protectors, as shields of your people. You believe that strength is everything, that you must bear the weight of the world alone. But true strength comes from humility, from recognizing that you cannot always be the shield. Sometimes you must let others protect you. Ratisbor bowed his head, his jaw tight. I understand. Dobrynya nodded slowly, his hand resting on Olga's shoulder. We will do what must be done. Anna looked at the book in her hands, at the runes that glowed with a fierce, ancient light. She thought of her mother, who had died without ever knowing the power that flowed in her blood. She thought of her father, lost in the chaos of the world, carrying his grief in silence. She thought of Olga, her wild, wonderful sister, who had always been the dreamer, the seer, the one who walked between worlds. And she made a choice. I will let go of my fear, she said, and the words felt like a stone dropping into still water. I will trust the power that is within me. I will trust the path, even when I cannot see where it leads. Olga took her hand, her fingers cold and trembling. And I will trust the unknown. I will not try to see every step before I take it. I will live in the moment, and I will trust my heart. The guardian smiled, and the grove erupted into light. Chapter 12. The Rune of Unity. The light was blinding, a white-hot blaze that seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the earth, from the trees, from the ancient boulder, from the very air. Anna felt the power flow through her, not just from the book, but from every fibre of her being. It was not a power that came from her, but through her, a channel, a vessel, a bridge between the world of men and the world of gods. And then, slowly, the light faded. In the centre of the stone circle, a new rune had appeared. It was etched into the surface of the boulder, glowing with a soft, golden light that pulsed in time with Anna's heartbeat. It was a symbol of 3 interlocking circles, each one connected to the others in a bond that could never be broken. A knot of eternity, a seal of unity. The rune of the rod, the guardian said, her voice echoing with a power that had not been there before. The rune of unity. With this, you can raise the shield that will protect the land. But it is not enough to possess it. You must become it. Anna reached out and touched the rune. It was warm beneath her fingers, pulsing with a steady, life-giving rhythm. "How do we use it?" she asked, her voice trembling. The guardian smiled. "You already know. It is in your blood, in your bones, in the very essence of who you are. Hold the book before you and speak the words that rise from your heart, not from your mind, but from the place where fear has no hold." Anna took a deep breath, the scent of ancient earth and moss filling her lungs. She raised the book above her head, and the runes blazed with a light that rivaled the sun. "Rod of the ancestors," she said, and the words came from somewhere deep within her, a place she had never known existed, a wellspring of memory and power that had been waiting for this moment. "Rod of the gods, rod of the people, we call upon you now. We call upon your power. Unite us, protect us, defend this land from the darkness that threatens to swallow it." The runes exploded with light, and the shield began to form. Anna felt it in her chest, a warmth that spread through her limbs, her veins, her very soul. She felt the presence of the others: Olga, her sister, her other half, her anchor in the chaos; Ratisbor, her warrior, her shield, her heart; Dobrynya, the wild one, the friend of beasts, the strength of the forest. They were not four individuals anymore. They were one, a single, radiant force bound by the power of the rod. The shield rose above them, a dome of golden light that covered the grove, the forest, the city of Kiev, the entire land. It pulsed with the energy of the old gods, the old ways, the old songs. It was a barrier against the darkness, a wall of light that no shadow could breach. Anna felt the weight of the runes settle into her bones, and she knew, with a certainty that went beyond faith, that the land would be protected. The guardian bowed her head. "It is done. The rod is whole. The shield is raised. Go now, return to your people. They will need you in the days to come." Anna looked at Ratisbor, at the man who had walked through fire with her, who had given up his pride for her, who had stood beside her in the darkest moment of her life. She felt the bond between them, forged in sacrifice and sealed in light. "Will you stay with me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ratisbor took her hand, his grey eyes shining. "I will stay with you forever, Anna. I have never been more certain of anything." Olga and Dobrynya stood together, their hands intertwined, their faces alight with joy. The four of them walked out of the grove, back through the ancient forest, back toward Kiev, and toward the future that awaited them. Chapter 13. The Feast of the Shield. The return to Kiev was a triumph unlike any the city had ever seen. The people poured out of the gates, their faces alight with joy, their voices raised in songs of praise. They had seen the shield rise above the land, a dome of golden light that stretched from the river to the hills, from the forests to the steppe. They had felt its warmth, its protection, its promise. They had heard the stories of the journey into the forest, of the sacrifice and the rune, and they had wept with gratitude. Anna and Olga were hailed as the saviours of the land. Boyars bowed before them, warriors pledged their swords to their cause. Even Princess Olga, the ruler of Kiev, emerged from her sickbed to greet them. She was pale and thin, her eyes shadowed with illness, but her voice was strong. "I have heard of your deeds," the princess said, taking Anna's hands in her own. "You have done what no one else could do. You have united the people, and you have protected the land from the darkness that threatened to devour it." Anna bowed her head, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. "We did what we had to do, Princess. We could not have done it alone." The princess smiled, a rare and radiant expression that transformed her tired face. That is the mark of true heroism, child. Not grand deeds, but simple duty. You have earned the gratitude of Kiev and of all the lands that look to Kiev for protection. The feast that night was the grandest Anna had ever seen. The great hall of the palace was filled with trestle tables, groaning under the weight of roasted meats, boar, venison and fowl, and baskets of fresh bread, bowls of honey and dried fruits, and flagons of mead and ale. The songs of the skalds filled the air, and the people danced and laughed and wept with joy. Anna and Ratisbor sat together at the high table, their hands touching, their hearts beating as one. The shield above them glowed with a steady, eternal light. After the feast, when the hall had emptied and the fires had burned low, Anna and Ratisbor walked together to the hill by the river. The stone circle gleamed in the moonlight, and the shield arched overhead like a second sky. "Will you stay?" Ratisbor asked, his voice soft in the quiet of the night. "In Kiev, with me?" Anna turned to face him, her eyes searching his grey gaze. "I will stay, for as long as you need me." Ratisbor took her hands, his thumbs tracing circles on her palms. "I need you forever, Anna, not just as a partner in battle, but as a partner in life. I have never met anyone like you, someone who carries so much and yet gives so freely. You are the heart of this land now, and you are the heart of me." Anna felt tears prick at her eyes, tears of joy, of relief, of love. "I am not a warrior," she said, her voice trembling. "I am just a girl from a village. I cannot promise to be brave all the time, or to always know what to do." Ratisbor cupped her face in his hands, tilting her gaze up to meet his. "That is what makes you brave, Anna. You are afraid, and you do it anyway. That is the truest courage I have ever known." He kissed her then, a gentle, reverent kiss that tasted of honey and mead and the promise of forever. And Anna knew, with every fibre of her being, that she had found her home. The wedding was held a week later, on the hill by the river, beneath the golden dome of the shield. Anna wore a dress of white linen, embroidered with the symbols of the old gods, the flame of Krada, the rainbow of Raduga, the interlocking circles of the rune of unity. Olga wore a dress of forest green, and her hair was woven with oak leaves and wildflowers. Ratisbor stood before the stone altar, his armour polished and gleaming, his sword at his side. Dobrynya was beside him, his broad face alight with joy, and between them stood the old priest of the grove, not a Christian monk, but a keeper of the old faith, a man whose family had served the gods for generations. "We are gathered here today," the priest said, his voice carrying over the assembled crowd, "to unite two souls, two warriors, two families. Anna and Ratisbor, Olga and Dobrynya. They have walked through fire and shadow to reach this moment. They have given up their fears, their pride, their certainty, and now they will give themselves to each other." Anna looked into Ratisbor's eyes, and she saw the depth of his love, the strength of his devotion. "I will love you forever," she said, her voice steady. "I will stand with you, fight with you, protect you with my life." Ratisbor took her hands, his calloused palms warm against hers. "And I will protect you, Anna. I will honour you, cherish you, defend you with every breath I have." The priest bound their hands with a ribbon of red, the colour of the fire rune. "You are bound together," he said, "in this life and the next. Nothing can break this bond." Olga and Dobrynya exchanged their vows, their voices filled with hope and joy. And when the ceremony was complete, the four of them turned to face the crowd. The people of Kiev cheered, the songs of the skalds filled the air, and the shield above them glowed with a steady, eternal light. Epilogue. The rod remembers. Years passed, and the shield held. Anna and Ratisbor had children, 2 sons and a daughter, each one born with the gift of the rod, with the runes singing in their blood. Olga and Dobrynya had a son, a wild-eyed boy who could speak to the wolves and hear the voices of the trees, a child of the forest and the old ways. The old ways were not forgotten. The runes were taught to the children, and the songs of the ancestors were sung in every village, in every longhouse, in every home. The shield protected the land from the darkness, and the people prospered. Anna never forgot the journey that had brought her to this moment. She remembered the dust of the attic, the warmth of the book, the voice of Baba Yaga. She remembered the vision in the water, the battle on the walls, the grove of the ancient oaks. She remembered the sacrifice, the fear, the love, and she knew with all her heart that the rod would always remember. The ancestors were not gone, the gods were not silent, the old ways were not lost. They were there, waiting, in the hearts of those who remembered. One evening, the Slavic amulets, the serpent pendants worn by Anna and Olga, are well-documented artifacts from the Kievan Rus period. They were typically crafted from bronze or iron and depicted a coiled snake or dragon, often with 2 heads. Such amulets were believed to possess apotropaic properties. They warded off evil spirits, disease, and malicious magic. They were worn close to the skin, as the sisters do in the novel, and their protective power was taken very seriously by the people of the time. Baba Yaga, as I have portrayed her, draws on a particular scholarly interpretation of Slavic mythology. While popular tradition often reduces her to a malevolent witch who devours children, some researchers argue that her origins lie in a more ancient, more benevolent figure, a fertility goddess, a guardian of the underworld, or a wise crone who guided souls through the cycles of life and death. The Christianization of the Rus transformed many such deities into demons or monsters, a process that I have tried to reflect in the hag's own tragic awareness of her diminished stature. The historical context of the 960s was a period of profound upheaval. The Kievan Rus was emerging as a major power in Eastern Europe, yet it faced incessant pressure from the Pechenegs, a confederation of Turkic nomads who raided the agricultural settlements along the Dnieper River and its tributaries. To the southeast, the Khazar Khaganate, once a dominant force, was in decline, its remnants eventually absorbed by the expanding Rus. The city of Kiev itself, with its wooden palisades and hilltop fortifications, was a bustling hub of Slavs, Varangians, Scandinavian traders and warriors, and peoples from across the known world, a crossroads of cultures, faiths, and ambitions. The religious practices described in this novel, the reverence for the runes, the veneration of ancestors, the worship of the old gods, reflect the pre-Christian beliefs of the Eastern Slavs. These traditions were not monolithic. They varied from tribe to tribe, from valley to valley. Yet they shared common threads, a deep connection to the land, a belief in the spiritual power of natural forces, and a cyclical understanding of time that honored the turning of the seasons. Elements of these beliefs survived the coming of Christianity, persisting in folk customs, fairy tales, and oral traditions that were passed down through the centuries, often in disguised or syncretic forms. The characters, while products of my imagination, are inspired by the types of people who would have lived in this era. Ratisbor and Dobrynya, as warriors, would have belonged to the Družina, the elite retinues that served the princes, bound by oaths of loyalty and rewarded with plunder, land, and honor. Women like Anna and Olga would have played crucial roles in their families and communities, managing households, preserving traditions, and, in some cases, wielding influence that later chronicles, written by men, often overlooked or diminished. The supernatural elements in this novel are not intended to suggest that magic literally existed in 10th century Kiev. Rather, they are a literary device that seeks to capture the worldview of the period, a worldview in which the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural were fluid, permeable, and alive. For the people of the time, the gods were not distant abstractions. They were forces that could be invoked, placated, or offended. The forest was not merely a collection of trees, it was a living presence. The river was not just water, it was a voice. In writing this story, I have tried to honor that worldview, to invite the reader into a mental landscape where the old gods still speak and the runes still sing. Finally, I wish to acknowledge that this novel is a work of historical fantasy, not a textbook. I have taken liberties for the sake of narrative, compressing timelines, blending traditions, and giving voice to characters who may never have existed. But I have done so with deep respect for the Slavic heritage that inspired these pages. The stories of our ancestors are not merely relics of the past, they are living threads that connect us to something larger than ourselves, to the land, to the seasons, to the cycle of birth and death and renewal. If this novel encourages even a single reader to look more closely at that heritage, to wonder about the voices that once echoed through the forests of the Dnieper, then it has achieved its purpose. The rod remembers, and so do we. The end. The Runes of the Rod, a novel of ancient Rus. Copyright 2026 by Anna Gogoleva. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic, mechanical, photocopying, recording, or otherwise, without the prior written permission of the author, except in the case of brief quotations embodied in critical articles or reviews. This is a work of historical fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents either are the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously, and any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, events or locales, is entirely coincidental. First edition, 2026.